If no one hears your truth, walk alone. If no one hears your cry, walk alone. Be not afraid, my friend, walk alone. No one hears your cry,
I was a mainstream musician sort of guy, writing music and playing the flute, and had the chance to work with some of the world's great musicians and orchestras, many of them over there at the festival hall. But I was never particularly interested in religion or politics. Then 9/11 blew my whole world apart. I'd watched the mainstream media for years and thought I was pretty well informed and that the West basically had good intentions. But as events unfolded, I realised I'd been totally misled. So decided to find out who was behind the total mayhem engulfing the world. Now that pretty soon turned into a quest into the truth of everything: religion, history, science, which, after years of frustration, led me to study with one of the world's great psychics. Then in 2018 I met Pakistan's first supermodel, Atiya Khan, who had been on a different but equally all-consuming quest for truth. Atiya's rise to fame had begun as an accident. Aged 16, she was working in an advertising agency, but they were short of models, so she volunteered.
It was during the time of Ziaul-Haq, it was the mid-80s, and this whole drive towards Islamization. And I think there were a bunch of young people wanting to kind of challenge that. And I was quite happy to be a part of that, sort of standing up to this dictator who was trying to turn Pakistan into, kind of a Taliban state.
Atiya was very firm about standing her ground on her rights and on how and where she wants to cover up and where she will draw the boundaries and not be told to cover her face, or where it's unnecessary to cover her head, where she will feel it's appropriate, she will do it. But you couldn't dictate to her. She came from a very strong sense of herself and she did it. And I think because she did it, many other women did it.
Yeah, so during that time, there were very few publications. There was, just one television channel. And so if you did a campaign or if you were modeling, you were, overnight sort of known by the whole country. So it did come to a point where I would be sort of, recognized wherever I go and sort of mobbed a little bit, yeah. By this time, I was very well known as a model, and I just kind of felt very vulnerable. I mean, I was still very, very young. I mean, I was 18, 19, and it was kind of overwhelming, and I felt I needed some kind of protection. And so when I met Asim, he was a bodybuilder, he looked very strong, and I thought, okay, if I'm with someone like that, I will keep a lot of people, especially male attention, away. By the time I hit 21, I kind of realized that this was not what my life was supposed to be, and I'd sort of gotten lost somewhere. And so I decided it was time to rediscover myself. And I knew that I needed seclusion, and I knew that I needed to reconnect with God. And so I went to my friend, like a mother, Nusi, and she arranged for me to go to this beautiful forest near Lahore. And a friend of hers had arranged this rest house where I could actually spend, 30, 40 days in seclusion. During that time, I prayed a lot, meditated, and studied the Quran. Because when I studied the Quran at 16, I felt I couldn't connect to an angry God. But this time, I could feel God's pain. I would cry, I could feel God's loneliness, God calling out to humanity and being ignored. The silence gave me a lot of clarity about my life as well. I no longer wanted to be in the limelight, and I knew deep down that I had to get a divorce and stop modeling.
I was 14 years old, living in this tough working class neighbourhood, and had been sent to Hogwarts, school for young accountants. There were beatings, canings, black gowns and mortarboard hats. You had to walk in line, not talking to anyone. But I would just lie on my bedroom floor, dreaming of becoming a classical flute player, and I would listen to Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute. I asked a few people what it was about, and they said it was Masonic. And what was Masonic supposed to mean? One thing I did know was my dislike for jazz and anything improvised. Then at a girlfriend's house I heard saxophonist John Coltrane, got the chills big style, then overnight and unbeknown to anyone, began listening to jazz when everyone was out of the house. Egged on by my crazy sister, I began jamming with the local hipsters. I was 15 and got thrown out of divinity class for suggesting that God may be female. That really pissed me off, and I decided, wait a minute, I'm not taking any of this teaching from you on any subject, and I kind of went into a one-man rebellion against the entire school, and my time there quickly came to a sticky end. I was expelled. Then I went to Guildhall School of Music and was playing jazz and classical, but the arguments continued. Why did modern classical music sound so friggin' ugly? And why was it being promoted when no one wanted to play it? Then a friend of mine said, if I thought I could do so much better, why didn't I? So I gave it a go, combining my love of Mozart and Bach with the modern jazz harmonies of John Coltrane. Atiya now turned her attention to being behind the camera, where she became a highly successful and respected TV director. Now, it was during this time that she met her second husband, but after the birth of her daughter, she saw a picture of Sufi master Shaykh Nazim, and all of a sudden her religious quest was reignited. She felt an overriding urge to meet him, which a few months later she did, and studied with him for 13 years, until his death in 2014.
Valuable thing that has been given to the sons of Adam. Try to be with truth. Truth is the same for all mankind. Truth is that which our conscience accepts, because our conscience is pure. The main purpose of spiritual exercises in any tradition is to enable us to overcome the objections of our egos, so that we may pursue our journeys to the oceans of unity.
Virtually all my music was based on visions I was having. In 1982, I wrote a virtuoso piano piece about being attacked by a lion, but not running from it or showing any fear, just staring and taking the pain. I dedicated it to fighter Muhammad Ali, particularly his fight with George Foreman in 1974, where he did exactly that, stayed on the ropes, suffering huge damage, waiting for George Foreman to tire himself out. And then he had a brief moment and he finished the fight. That someone could want something so badly he is prepared to die for it had a huge impact on me. Having been a Muslim for many years, towards the end of his life, Muhammad Ali adopted a Sufi understanding of Islam and became a follower of Atiya's teacher, Shaykh Nazim.
The essence of the wisdom our Lord seeks to impart unto us through all His revelations is summarized in one word: unity.
Inspired by Shaykh Nazim, Atiya began combining her religious quest with her media know-how.
It becomes a very interesting discussion, and that's when the penny starts dropping, and that's when conversions start happening, where minds start opening, So I feel that my conversations with a lot of radical, scholars and a lot of radical clergy has sort of softened them a lot. And some of them have become very good friends as well.
Join me, Atiya Khan, on Zikr Se Fikr Tak.
In the 1980s, I was writing music and playing the flute, and I particularly remember a concert in the festival hall conducted by my great friend Barrington Phelan, in which I played his favourite piece of music, the flute solo from the Magic Flute, which sparked off my interest in Mozart's Magic Flute once again. The opera begins with a serpent attacking the flute player, but I read Mozart had originally wanted a lion, but he couldn't get it to work mechanically. Then Papageno arrives, who is a birdman, a bird catcher, and he's trying to help the flute player, but there are things he can't or won't say. The Queen of the Night is angry, wants revenge against Sarastro. Then the flute player gets obsessed with a painting and goes through all of these trials till finally there's an illumination of some sort at the end. The joy of Isis is accorded to us, Mozart says. But what is the joy of Isis? The ancient Egyptians talked about Ka, life energy going on, but none of the Egyptians ever came back, so it was obviously just all a myth. Although looking into it all, something did strike me. Mozart mentions Osiris and Isis in the opera, but he never mentions their son, Horus. So, an angry woman, a flute player and a birdman. People thought it was a pantomime, but I felt Mozart must have been trying to tell us something profound. After all, he was desperate to finish the opera, but he wasn't so bothered about his final piece, the Requiem. But what was he saying?
Before I met Shaykh Nazim, I had no idea about the Sufi saints and the shrines, and he made sure that I kind of got a crash course in the shrines, but he kept indicating that I needed to visit the shrine of Lal Shahbaz Qalandar.
Here I am in the back courtyard of the main shrine of Hazrat Lal Shahbaz Qalandar, and as you can see, I'm surrounded by a multitude of humanity from different walks of life, and they all seem to be participating in the devotional dance.
And the reason that he got this title of Lal Shahbaz Qalandar was because he's supposed to have taken the form of a giant falcon to rescue a friend of his who was going to be executed. It was actually after I came back that it suddenly hit me, and I kind of got into this altered state of reality. I don't understand what it was. It felt perhaps like an alternate reality or past life flashbacks. I just didn't know, but I felt like I was actually back in time, and I was connecting very strongly with a character, you know, from that time, which was Lal Kunwar, who was supposed to be Lal Shahbaz's spiritual wife, and I could see him and I could see them, and I felt like I was there with them. So for a couple of months I was really in an alternate reality.
For 25 years I wrote music, had never been interested in politics or religion, but the events of 9/11 triggered a quest. I began reading the Bible, then the Quran, incessantly. Then a year later I was commissioned to write a piece for Jewish reporter Daniel Pearl, who had been on a quest into the truth of 9/11, but had been murdered by jihadists in Pakistan. As I was writing the piece, I began to feel in some deep way that I must complete his quest, and that sparked a quest into everything: history, religion, science. Then after 5 years, in total frustration, I decided to try working out my own theory of existence, that maybe gravitational force is actually the attraction of atoms to increase their consciousness. That increased consciousness is the driving force behind evolution, and that God is a universal force behind everything. But I didn't know if it was true.
So on my second visit to Sevan, I was passing by the dera or where the Malangs live, and there was this Malang who kind of ran after me and said, "Mama wants to meet you, Mama wants to meet you." So I kind of went into their dwelling place, and Mama was there, and he sat me down, and we had tea, and it was like an instant connection. And his name is Daman, but he insisted I call him Mama, which means uncle, maternal uncle, and he just kind of adopted me.
अच्छा अब क्या करना है ना बाबा जैसे वो आदमी वो बीमार हो गया था तो मैं बीमार हो गई थे सच्ची बात आस्ता 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 सही है And now we're going to sample some lovely tea made by my friend the Fakir himself. This is one of my favorite times in Sevan, is when I'm relaxed, sitting with these wonderful people, enjoying a good conversation and a lovely warm cup of tea. They're the warmest, most hospitable people that I've come across.
The Qalandars believe that it's the same consciousness that is coming into various prophets. So they believe that it's Adam who returned as Shiva, Jesus, Hazrat Ali and Lal Shahbaz Qalandar, that they are the same being. Yes, it was a very radical concept, especially from the Islamic, perspective, because we don't talk about reincarnation as such. The Qalandars are actually the most radical Sufi group, and their philosophy is very, very different from what you would find in other Islamic or Sufi traditions.
Atiya then documented her quest in a film, The Calendar Code, which was her Islamic answer to the Da Vinci Code, as she felt there must be a similar truth at the bottom of it all. By 2005, I was in total despair, and then through a whole series of strange coincidences, I bumped into one of the world's great psychics. She said to me I could ask whatever questions I wanted. I was friggin' nervous and actually considered doing a runner at one stage, but my inquisitive side quickly took over. And by this stage I was so frustrated trying to find truth, I really didn't care what happened to me anyway. So then I decided to go ask, okay, who was the original Christ and what was his original teaching?
Christ was a great practicing yogi who studied in India for 18 years, expansion of the mind to allow healing of the body. He was a political revolutionary as well as a great spiritual thinker who taught his followers how to open the crown chakra to channel light. He was opposed to revenge, an eye for an eye, which creates such terrible political and social suffering. His teachings on reincarnation, of fulfilling a soul's destiny, were done in great secrecy, as those in power did not want to give this type of individuality to this huge population they had to control.
I left Sophia's place and it felt like the top of my head had blown off, because I was thinking that if everything she said was real, that meant that much of history, science and religion were all wrong. After I calmed down a bit, I reread the Gospels and wanted to see if there were any hints of reincarnation that the Romans may have overlooked or left in by mistake. And would you believe it? In John's Gospel, Christ describes how the body is made of water, but that the spirit is separate, flies wherever it wishes. Then he insists at the end, you must be born again, and he means being born again many times. Reincarnation, the secret to eternal life.
Your body is an expression of water consciousness, but your spirit is separate. It's like the wind, flies wherever it wishes.
Reincarnation is a learning process. You come back to gain more compassion and understanding by experiencing humanity in all its variety and richness. Your past lives exist at a cellular and subconscious level. You can't remember them, but they are part of who you really are.
Over the course of several years studying with Sophia, my understanding of reincarnation deepened. She shared with me my connection to the early Christian teachings, that I had been a heretic, so my visions of being attacked by a lion were almost certainly a past life reality. Then I went to the various places I was supposed to have lived, but didn't feel any particular connection to any of them. Then I had a profound realisation that I'd actually been a heretic all along, that it's in the subconscious mind. So when I met Atiya and saw her calendar code film, I realised that coming from a completely different place and using a completely different method, her understanding of reincarnation was actually very similar to mine. But unfortunately, I went at her like a bull in a china shop, wanted to share everything I'd learnt all in an instant. Now, as you've probably realised by now, Atiya has a very individual, powerful mind, and she grilled me about everything, which led to a series of heated discussions. Eventually we both calmed down, and knowing how much I liked her film, she invited me to Karachi, Pakistan, to see the places that had meant so much to her. I knew Daniel Pearl had been abducted and murdered near Karachi, so I felt a huge compulsion to go there, for many reasons. So, the shrine that had triggered Atiya's quest, the shrine of Lal Shahbaz Qalundar. 2 years before we arrived there, an Islamic State fighter had blown himself up, killing over 90 worshippers. There was talk of closing the shrine, but the worshippers were having none of it. Passing the places in Karachi where Daniel Pearl had been captured then murdered, I now felt he'd been leading me from the beginning and was wanting me to turn a point of great darkness and make it a point of light.
Nisa pani mapa mapani gare gare sa 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 re 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 ga 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 re 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 sa re ga re ga ma pa ma ga re sa sa re sa Nisa pani mapa mapani gare gare sa re sa Nisa pani mapa mapani gare gare sa re sa Nisa pani mapa mapani gare gare
As we entered the shrine, the words of Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi echoed through my mind. I was now only a few feet away from where the Islamic State fighter had blown himself up. I could see the exact place. The explosion marks were still visible. It was now the right time, it was now the right place. I had to try and honour Judaism, Christianity and Islam all in one moment.
Want to see the world.
My dad, I won't even say was, I'm going to say is my best friend. And I know he's still very much with me. I'm a very, very, very lucky woman to have had a father who gave me unconditional love, support, who was my biggest champion, made sure that I didn't feel any less for being a woman. He never stopped me from doing anything. He never made me feel like being a woman I would have to be or not do certain things. He just implicitly, completely trusted me.
And the purpose of life is to be at a level of non-judgment. For through non-judgment comes the ability to connect to the true vibration that is love. But something more huge than selfish love. It is non-judgmental and unconditional. And the purpose of human existence is to finally acknowledge in a conscious state the oneness of all. Reducing Mary Magdalene to a prostitute plummeted civilization into the Dark Ages. It is time for truth to be revealed and consciousness to rise.
After 12 years of talking to Sophia, I gradually realised what reincarnation is, that it's the same talents and it's the same personality put in different situations. So I understood that Isis, Mary Magdalene and Lisa de Gerandini, the Mona Lisa, were one and the same, a woman of immense psychic talent in different incarnations. That female psychic teachings have been taken out of all the religions right back to Zoroastrianism. So now I understood why the Queen of the Night, Mother Earth energy in Mozart's opera, was angry with Zoroaster. Then I noticed that women's eye makeup in ancient Egypt looked like the third eye, our radar to higher dimensions. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the son of Isis and Osiris, Horus, is known as the falcon spirit. And I began to wonder if the eye of Horus, rather than being something sinister, was in fact a description of a man with the greatest third eye connection, the kindest man who ever lived, the anointed one, God's messenger. And I began to think with Mozart's astonishing talent from such a young age that maybe he himself had been the falcon spirit, which is why he never mentions Horus in his opera. That maybe Papagena, the birdman, the father figure, had come from the spiritual realm to help his flute-playing friend, but there are certain things he can't say. That far from being a pantomime, Mozart's opera may have been a profound message from the falcon spirit to all humanity.
I was staying at a friend's house, and suddenly there was a bit of a commotion outside, and when I went out into the garden, there was this falcon with a horribly damaged, injured wing. A vet very close by, so we decided to sort of take the falcon to the vet. But somehow I felt this deep connection, with this falcon, and I didn't want to leave it alone. But every time I would try and then go home, it would run away and chase, follow me, or even go ahead of me. So I knew that it was very attached to me, and it somehow wanted me to take care of him. And COVID was starting, and the lockdown was going to start, and we took the last train out from Islamabad to Karachi.
Normally I would have gathered people for what we call a baisi, kind of prayer for the death anniversary, but with corona and social distancing and having been away, it's just that's not even possible actually. So I'm gonna go to his grave and pray there.
Love is the most precious, valuable thing that has been given to the sons of Adam. Try to be with truth. Truth is the same for all mankind. Truth is that which our conscience accepts, because our conscience is pure. Essence of the wisdom our Lord seeks to impart unto us through all His revelations is summarized in one word: unity.
Welcome to my life, and say hello to Lounge.
I've gone through such an evolution in my in my ideas about religion and spirituality, and I really now feel it's about oneness, and it's the same message and the same God, sending the same message through various messengers in various times and places, and to honor all faith traditions. And what truly inspires me is the power of sacred symbols, from every faith tradition. So I feel that more and more I want to incorporate spirituality into all aspects of life, including what I wear and fashion. And so the idea of Arizai came about, and basically I am inspired by sacred symbols from sacred geometry, yin yang, hamsa, so forth. So I feel that my clothes are bridging the gap between fashion and spirituality, and also kind of acting like amulets of power and protection.
The reincarnation, for instance, I feel it's more a reincarnation of consciousness, and I quote biblical and the Quranic scripture about the sleepers of the cave. And that's how I see the concept of reincarnation, because for me, everything that I say has to have a reference in the sacred scriptures. As Muslims, we believe in the sacred texts of Judaism, of Christianity. Two people coming from very different traditions, being able to try and hear each other and try and respect the differences as well.
If what Sophia shared with me is right about Christ's teaching, that's very significant to both Christianity and Islam, because Christ's teaching is verified in the Quran. As for me, having studied religion for over 20 years, I finally came to the conclusion it's really all about kindness, which is what the wife of the Prophet said of him, that he was the kindest man who ever lived. And that says it all, really.
Islam has kind of different sects, and different schools of thought. The most diverse kind of ways of approaching Islam are Sufism, let's say, versus Wahhabism. Okay, now Wahhabism is your Saudi-based, Saudi-funded, Saudi version of Islam. And as far as the Sufis are concerned, similarly, they believe that this intolerant, version of Islam where anybody who doesn't agree with their version of Islam can be labeled a kafir, there can be a war waged against them, is completely unacceptable, because, for Sufis, the only jihad or war that you're allowed to have is with your own nafs, or with your own ego, and look within yourself and improve yourself, and question and blame yourself, and let Allah judge others.
Be not afraid, my friend, walk alone. No one hears your cry, walk alone. Here's your If no one speaks your truth, laughs in fear, or turn their backs, my friend, to all that you hold dear, then with an open heart, loud and clear, bear your soul, my friend, for all to hear.
people should know the real truth about Islam. You know me, I'm a boxer. I'm called the greatest of all time. People recognize me for being a boxer and a man of truth. I wouldn't be here representing Islam if it was really like the terrorists make it look. I think all the people should know the truth and come to recognize the truth, because Islam is peace.
So incredibly beautiful. So wise, so calm, so beautiful.